Mr. Grice?
Here.
Mr. Stein?
Here.
And Alder DePula is excused.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from May 30th, 2024?
Move approval?
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any changes, Chris?
Well, it's not a change, I wasn't there, but did you seriously only have a 12-minute meeting when I wasn't there?
Yes, we did.
The shortest ever, and
Sorry.
am I the reason it was so short?
I was gonna say, there might be a reason it was so 12
We'll see what we can do about dragging it out the next time.
No comment.
Any other comments, changes? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, minutes are approved. I think we'll stick with the order of business this evening. Is there anyone here to make an appearance who is not on the agenda? Anyone here to make an appearance either on the screen or in the room that is not on the agenda? Don't have anything? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the appearance section and go to number 6A, a public hearing on the request by Slendy Realty Group, represented by Schneider and Associates, for consideration of a two-lot certified survey map to combine parcels 0710-201-9810-4 and 0710-201-9820-2 and 0710-201-9880-0, as well as Lot 1 of CSM 2681 at 112-208 Owen Road into two lots, case number 2-011-2024. Do we have anyone?
Brian Ockend, the engineer representing this, is on the line.
Brian, welcome. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Sure. So for those not familiar, this CSM was approved a couple years ago. It's off Owen Road. There's 4 existing lots. The CSM would reduce that to 2 lots for 2 separate multifamily buildings with a number of shared easements across the 2 lots, one being access, another for stormwater management, and then 2 more for the sanitary and water laterals. We did come for a pre-hearing, and it was pointed out there was a label that didn't get updated. The access easement ended up getting wider from what was approved a couple years ago because of some site plan changes, mainly the addition of diagonal parking instead of parallel parking. So we made the access easement wider to ensure that those parking stalls are included in the entire access easement. And a question was raised on whether the circular turn at the bottom south of the site would be fully covered by that 51.5-foot access easement. We did verify that. So otherwise, I think pretty straightforward from there.
Okay, can I get anyone else here to speak about this particular request? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and move to number 6B, consideration of action on the request by Slendy Realty Company, represented by Schneider and Associates, for consideration of the 2-lot certified survey map TSM to combine parcels 0710-201-9810-4, 0710-201-9820-2, and 0717-201-9880-0, as well as Lot 1 CSM 2681 at 112-208 Owen Road into 2 lots, case number 2-011-2024. Doug?
Thank you. So as mentioned, the request here is the consideration on the request for the 4-lot CSM at 112-208 Owen Road. The proposed CSM would facilitate the development and the redevelopment of the existing commercial buildings there into 2 proposed multifamily buildings. The updated general development plan will be considered at the next meeting at June 24th Plan Commission meeting. The previous CSM did receive City Council approval in 2022, but was never recorded per state statute. If it's not recorded within 12 months, the applicant must reapply. I did confirm that this did not need to go back to the Public Works Committee, given that nothing at sort of the northern end there along Owen Road, the public right-of-way, changed, so that has remained constant, and their review and their recommendation still holds. A couple edits were made by the applicant, one edit, one clarification. The shared driveway entrance was clarified at the 51.5 feet for the private access easement, so those dimensions were confirmed. Additionally, the private road connector, there was discussion about the turning circle that was shown on the GDP. It was confirmed that that does fit within the 51.5 feet, and it still allows for some additional right-of-way or some access there as well around the circle itself. Additionally, there are private easements between the two lots for the stormwater management, water main, sanitary sewer that are all shown on the plans. In terms of the city standards, this is zoned CDD, Community Design District. There are no specific standards for the lots in terms of size, but they must be able to accommodate future development. Proposed lot 1 would be 1.675 acres. Proposed lot 2 would be 2.375. It meets all dimensional requirements in terms of access to right-of-way and things like that. Since the pre-hearing, this was reviewed by the engineer with Vierbecker on the city's behalf, and their review letter is included in the packet. And that's included as a suggested condition of the recommendation to council that the two-lot CSM be approved. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Doug. And with that, I'll open it up to the commission. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure, no issues, no comments, looks fine.
Okay. Colleen?
No comments.
Okay. Susan?
No comments.
John?
No comments.
Rob?
No comments.
Okay. With that, I'd be delighted to entertain a motion.
I would move approval of the recommendation that we recommend this to this Monona City Council for approval with the conditions as written by staff.
Second.
Okay. And we have a second over here. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion is approved. Sure, thank you. With that, move to new business, number 7A, public hearing on the request by SWD Management LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new golf entertainment venue at 5600 Gisholt Drive, corner of Gisholt Drive and Engel Street, case number 2-012-2024. That, gentlemen, I'd like you, if you could come forward, sir?
Just looking at the number of presenters there and then looking at the pharmacy, would it be prudent to just relook at the order of business?
Sure. Apologies. Yeah, we can do that.
Sorry.
That's all right. I did, sure. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it. So why don't we move to number 7C, public hearing on the request by Forward Pharmacy for approval of the zoning permit for new use at 5711 Monona Drive, case number 2-013-2024. Forward Pharmacy.
Actually online, we're joined by Matt
Okay.
online.
Matt, welcome. The floor
Thanks
is
for having me.
yours.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We
Yes.
can.
Good. So I purchased the Medicine Shop Pharmacy, which is at 4205 Monona Drive. And we are hoping to move it down to the building that we recently purchased, which will be the old Ultimate Salon building, that 5709, 5711. That's up for debate how many addresses are associated with the building. So we're hoping to move our pharmacy down there and occupy 3,000, about 3,200 square feet of the building, and then leave the other 4,000 square feet open for future rental.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on this particular proposal for Forward Pharmacy before I close the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And move to consideration action. Number 7D, consideration of action on the request by Forward Pharmacy for approval of the zoning permit for new use at 5711 Monona Drive, case number 2-013-2024. Doug?
Thank you. So as mentioned, the zoning permit application here for a new retail use. The applicant would like to move from 4205 to 5711 Monona Drive. and occupy just under 50% of the space. The property itself is zoned retail business and also subject to the Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines. It's been vacant for over 6 months and was most recently occupied by the Ultimate Veritas Spa Salon. The zoning permit is required for the reuse when it's been discontinued for 6 months or more. One point to note here is that back in April of this year, the Commission did approve a zoning permit for Capital City Wellness and Aesthetics. That use is no longer looking to occupy this space. I did have contact after the meeting, and ultimately we have the new applicant coming forward for that request. So a lot of overlap, certainly with the building, but just wanted to clarify that up front as well. So the zoning and land use, this is zoned retail business district. Both the current and future land use maps have this as a commercial use, and it appears to align with the comp plan's vision for the site as well as the nearby business uses. There are some building modifications that are proposed as part of the application, removing walls, doors, drop ceiling, and flooring. And then there's also mention of exterior updates at a later date as well. The 3,200 of the just over 7,200 square feet would be occupied by the Forward Pharmacy, with the recommendation or the likelihood that future tenants would occupy the remainder of the space. And the suggestion from staff is that they be subject to zoning permits just to verify the compatibility of the use, and of course, parking and compatibility as well. So as far as the parking, one parking stall would be required for each 300 square feet of, that's sort of the typical commercial parking standards. And so given the 7,200 square feet, 24 stalls would be needed. This does have 40 parking stalls, including 2 handicap stalls, with 9 in the front facing Monona Drive and then 31 in the rear, accessible off Owen Road. There is also the yoga center that is at 103 Owen Road, and that use would remain unchanged by this request. There was discussion at the April meeting of this year about separate signage, if there's a need to designate between them. Previously, the Commission felt it was fine as it is, but maybe something to discuss this evening. The number of employees was listed, as well as deliveries and expectations for the pharmacy use. It looks as if there is sufficient parking for the use that will sort of self-regulate, given the cyclical nature of the business and sort of the steady flow of customers to the space. The parking lot striping could probably do with being restriped, and that's a possible condition the Commission may choose to look at. The landscaping was mentioned back in April as well, the repair of the fence in the rear on the west side of the building, as well as improving the site landscaping, suggestion of sort of softening the landscaping on the entrance on the east side, possible landscaping as you enter the building. Hours of operation are listed as 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. And signage is still being finalized at this point, but most likely would need to return to the Commission for review and approval. And with that, staff recommendation is approval with the conditions as listed in the staff report. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Okay, with that, I'll open it up to the Commission. Brendan, do you want to start this one?
I think it's an appropriate use. I have no other comments.
Okay. Okay, Rob?
I agree. I have no issues with the use. I would agree with the recommendations of landscaping and striping to bring the business up to snuff.
Okay.
That's all.
Great, John?
In the letter in our packet dated June 5th, 2024, the last sentence refers to appreciation for input on colors, exterior aesthetics, to conform with other businesses on Monona Drive. I'm not sure we want them to conform with all the businesses on Monona Drive, but I get the gist, but that would be coming back at a later date for approval. Is that correct?
That is the suggestion that depending on sort of the extent of the facade improvements. So I would suggest there is sort of that canopy right now. If that were removed and there was sort of a new element put on, something like that, but probably, just coat of paint or something like that would not necessitate that. So certainly if the Commission has preference, that if it's sort of staff review and then sort of deferred to if it needs to return, but I'd open that up to the Commission.
Thank you.
I think it's
Anything else?
appropriate use. Everything else is
Okay.
fine.
Okay, great. Susan?
No, I think it's appropriate use as well, and obviously, if you rent the other part of the building, you could look at parking again with that, but otherwise, the parking looks fine too. And I don't know whether there's any need to delineate. I mean, I think it sounds like the flow will be such that delineating between the yoga studio, for example, and this is not necessary. Is that your thought, Matt? That there's no reason
Yeah,
to-
we haven't, they have classes pretty early and
Right.
pretty late in the afternoon, so our traffic usually won't overlap.
Right, that's what I would think, so, yeah, no concerns, and I'd be fine with going back to staff for that small amount of work, exterior work.
Great. Colleen? Cory?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is great. The question I guess I had was about this, you don't know who the tenant's gonna be, so you don't know this yet, but the sign aspect, if you have if you're expecting two different tenants, yourself and then another, are you just going to put a sign for Forward Pharmacy? Are you gonna leave space for that other business? Do you have thoughts on that?
Not knowing the specifics of the sign ordinance quite yet, I was gonna start working with a sign company to design that. I guess I would, my vision would be to kind of center a Forward Pharmacy sign over our space. Appropriate size depending on how much frontage we occupy of the building, and then that would leave space for the other two tenants or one tenant to have room on their side of the building.
Okay. Yeah, I would recommend you work with Doug and make sure you understand the sign ordinance as you're doing that. But otherwise, I think it looks great, and I'm excited to have you there.
Thank you, Chris?
The use, I think, is great. Parking, no issues right now. That used to have, 30, 40 chairs in it, and they seem to make parking work. So for this use, they're not going to have any issues. And the yoga studios coming in the back where they got that huge lot. And this customer, I imagine this place will probably park in the back, and they'll have plenty of customer parking up front. Landscaping, I hope you understand, there was a unified landscape plan put in with Monona Drive. That stuff's, most of it's gone right now on the frontage, but Debbie would always plant, pretty much, she'd plant a lot of flowers in there. She had all kinds of flowers in the summertime. It always looked great. Nobody ever said anything. So the thing is to get it back up where there's virtually no landscape on the site, so that, and we always had a few pots up by, large pots, so I say pots, not little pots, but large pots up by the building, which she had some colorful stuff and some things in there just to soften it up a little bit. Otherwise, it's impervious surface from there to the road. The future facade, I almost think should come back here because I anticipate a major change. I doubt, from the sounds of it, it's probably not going to keep the arch, probably not the awnings, probably do some kind of a redo on it. So I would think, I think that's where John was going with it. It's probably going to be enough of a change that we should probably take a look at it. We have very eclectic architecture on Monona Drive. There is no design theme up and down Monona Drive. You've seen it. So what we look for is something that hopefully is an upgrade to what that old building was when it was just a white brick building. So, and that's really in your court. You don't have to do it now, but when it comes back, I think we should probably take a look at it. You asked in there if you could have additional doors. Yes, this is a multi-tenant building now that you're looking to do. So if you find two 2,000 square foot tenants or a 3,000 and two 1,000s, it'll be like any other multi-tenant building where we would allow that. The one thing I'll talk about though is in the signage. That's why they asked about the signage, is we do look for consistency in kind of the size and the height of it, so we don't have a Forward Pharmacy and some little thing you can't read and then some gargantuan thing. So think about your facade when you meet with your sign company on how you're going to sign it. I know you don't know your tenants, but it's still a thought on how are we going to do this to get the signage I want and sell it for my tenants. And it's based on linear feet of frontage, so Doug can certainly go over all that with you. But some type of consistency we do look for on one building when there's multiple signs on one building.
Okay.
And I agree with the previous comments. I don't see any reason to have assigned signage for any tenants here. I mean, they're going to come and go. And like I said, Debbie built that lot, and with all those chairs, she had enough parking. Unless you get some tenants that really, really burn up parking, and that's one of the things we talk about when they come. Unless you get that, you'll be just fine, I think, with parking. Let people park where they can. So, that's it. I think it's a great use, and I'd welcome you to Monona, but you've been here for a few months already.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Anything else from the commission? If not, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll move approval with the conditions as written by staff and adding a 7th condition that the applicant restripe the parking lot.
Okay. Do I have a
A
second?
second.
You have a second,
Mhm.
Brendan? Okay. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Matt, welcome to Monona.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay.
Big project, and I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. Now we'll go back up to number 7A, public hearing on the request by SWD Management LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new golf entertainment venue at 5600 Gishalt Drive, corner of Gishalt Drive and Engel Street, case number 2-012-2024. Now, gentlemen, welcome to the front of the room here, if you would, where hopefully we have working microphones. Appreciate your patience.
Hello?
It works.
Great, thank you very much. Again, welcome, and the floor is yours. for the public
Great.
hearing.
Great, thanks Nancy.
Sure.
Well, hello everyone. I believe I know most of you, but my name is Steve Dorn. I'm with Galway Companies. We're a local commercial real estate development company based in Monona. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we've done a couple projects in Monona. The most recent project we did was the Current in Monona, where Buck and Honey's is, and Abbott Hotel. We're here tonight to talk about what we believe is a very exciting project where the current WPS headquarters is located. I've been working for a little under a year now with WPS to acquire some land where they have some underutilized office buildings, along with the neighboring property where there are some multi-tenant buildings called the Gishalt office multi-tenant buildings. Doug, would you mind bringing up a site plan for us?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So the site that we're looking at right now is a little under 20 acres of developable land, bordered between the Beltline on the south edge of it and Broadway on the north edge. We are here tonight with what I believe is the best-in-class golf entertainment facility, who is interested in building a 72-bay hitting golf complex on the south side of the property, which would leave our company just under 6 acres of developable land to the north of it. We don't currently have a plan for the excess land, and believe that it could be a couple years, a year to two, before we do have that. We don't want today's interest rates to drive that project. We believe it needs some thought and needs to be done the right way. This is one of the largest developable parcels in our landlocked community, and so we want to make sure that we are able to give time to thoughtfully design the rest of the project. We also have Deanna Bogley here from WPS tonight. WPS is committed to staying in the community, and Deanna wants to talk with you all a little bit about her thoughts on WPS's vision for where they're relocating some of their employees as part of this project, and their vision for their hybrid remote and in-person office future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Todd Waldo.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, good evening, everyone. Todd Waldo with Topgolf. We're excited about partnering with Steve and working with the city of Monona to bring the first Topgolf to the state of Wisconsin right here in Monona. We do have a short presentation tonight. I don't know how many people are familiar with Topgolf or have been to a Topgolf. but we feel that we have found the right spot for it. We've been looking for probably 5 or 6 years across the entire state, Milwaukee, Madison, and everywhere in between, and feel that we have found the right property to build and to be sustainable in the future. So I just wanted to share a few things with you all today. I know we have a presentation with some slides. I know there's a lot of documentation in the booklets that everybody received regarding plans and elevations and things of that sort, but just want to give everybody a little bit of an opportunity to get familiarized with Topgolf, and we have some photos to share with you as well. But if we can go to the next slide. So next slide, please. So this is just similar to the site plan you just had on the screen that's in your packets, but just kind of big picture here, stepping back, partnering with Steve, and as he mentioned, this is going to be part of a mixed-use development. Certainly Topgolf will be the first phase of it. But in total, we're looking at about a 16-acre mixed-use development. Topgolf's about 10, 11 acres of that. Looking at making a multi-million-dollar investment, $30+ million investment in the city with the construction of this venue. Just will serve as a regional destination for the world-class entertainment. We expect this to be a tourism draw to people as far away as an hour or more, whether that's from across the state of Wisconsin, northern Illinois, potentially even eastern Iowa, coming to this venue. Certainly will strengthen the tax base. There's some underutilized property there that will be put into operation, and then just really huge economic development opportunity here with 300 jobs being created. We have learned that over the past 5 to 10 years especially, there's been a lot of spin-off development as a result of Topgolf. There's other entertainment uses that follow us around, other commercial uses that follow us around. So I would anticipate that there would be an opportunity to really create a lot of synergies amongst the properties that are adjacent within within half a mile or so of the Topgolf location, that will serve to bring potentially some other new to market uses to Monona. But this gives you an idea of just how it's laid out. The front of the building is on Gizzle Drive on the west side, and then it faces eastward. We really orient our buildings that way. If you've been to a Topgolf, you kind of understand the different components within it, but it's a full-service restaurant and bar. It's got some outdoor space to it, outdoor seating, outdoor patio, but the main engine is essentially the driving range component of it. And this is 2 levels, but what we call the T-line, the hitting bays, where the actually the Topgolf gameplay occurs. Just compare it to just a driving range, a multi-tier driving range. We orient that towards the east because our peak period for customer demand is usually in the evening. So we don't want, from a customer experience, don't want our customers looking into the hot setting sun, have them having a much more better feel and aesthetic towards their experience. But that's how we orient this. Certainly we've got some photos to illustrate some of the unique features of Topgolf, including our net poles and things of that sort. But this is just the basic orientation. We've got 350 parking spaces. We've built similar venues to this across the country. One that is relatively close under construction is in Des Moines, Iowa. That opens in September. So we've kind of right-sized this for the market, and similarly, we've right-sized the parking to meet the demand of the venue as well. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, this will be the first in the state of Wisconsin. It's also one of the first of its kind. It's a new venue format that we've rolled out over the past couple of years. We probably have 5 or 6 of these open right now and a few more under construction. We really feel that this is becoming the future as well. It's more of a family-friendly, community-focused, 2-story venue, 72 hitting bays. Again, as I mentioned, full-service restaurant and bar, outdoor patio, the latest and greatest Toptracer technology. If you've ever watched golf on TV during the broadcast, you see the ball tracking technology. Well, that is Toptracer that will all of the hitting bays will be equipped with that latest technology. So it really makes it a very immersive experience for our customers. Next slide, please. So just some high-level information about Topgolf if you are familiar or vaguely familiar or just learning about it. We're certainly, as Steve mentioned, premier golf entertainment venue with the best-in-class business operation. We have over 100 venues operating across the world. Just opened our 100th venue last month in California. We've been on a trajectory to open 10 to 11 venues over the past few years. And we have a lot of partnerships as well. Some of those partnerships that I should highlight are the PGA Tour, the First Tee organization, Special Olympics, amongst others. So we're a young but mature company. It was founded in 2000 out in London, and since then we've grown domestically to have 90 venues, and we have 9 international venues. 4 of those are in the UK. So really, there's a lot of room for growth, and being able to locate in Monona is part of our strategy going forward. We talked a little bit about the economic input, the job creation, the initial investment. We're estimating about 200,000 visitors or more coming to this venue per year. And we have become, a premier destination for corporate charity and group entertainment. We have all kinds of activities and events that are held at Topgolf, from corporate events to social events to weddings and bar mitzvahs, you name it. It's happened at Topgolf. Can we go to the next slide, please? So a little bit about that. What we are trying to attract is breaking down the barriers of entry to golf. Most of our guests consider themselves non-golfers. Certainly have plenty of golfers that go to Topgolf as well, but this is really sometimes someone's first introduction to the game of golf. And that translates to kind of a gateway to green grass golf. So it would pair well with all of the courses in the state, but also give folks an opportunity that have never tried the game to get involved. But it's really the social aspect, convening with family and friends and having a good time. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, a lot of that, what I just described, is called the Topgolf advantage. So sometimes golf is very exclusive, and Topgolf is inclusive. Because it's fun and it's affordable, we've got this technology within the venue itself. You can play golf all year round. I know some golfers that may be in here that would be ecstatic to hear that. All of our bays are climate controlled. We've got heaters, we've got fans for the summer, so it really makes it very enjoyable to golf all year long in all seasons. Next slide, please. Yeah, a little bit about the community. Certainly, we take that very seriously and are very dedicated to the communities that we serve. We've got a lot of programs that benefit both the local and larger geographical areas. But if we can go to the next slide. One of those initiatives is called the Youth Play It Forward Initiative, and that started back in 2017. We have directors of instruction in all of our venues that are able to teach the game of golf to youth and all kinds, all ages really. But this Youth Play It Forward Initiative is a partnership that we have with a lot of nonprofits in the local area that allows Boys and Girls Clubs, the First Tee, things of that sort. Any nonprofit that works with the youth, mentors the youth, we allow them free game play during the week, during certain time periods. It's become extremely popular with local high school teams that have golf, with boys and girls golf teams that come and they practice, throughout the week. It's a good opportunity for them to have almost like a swing coach with them in the bay because of all the technology and all the data that derives from that experience. So that's been extremely popular, and that would be something that we would like to certainly extend in Monona as well. Next slide, please. We're also very much engaged with the military. We have a lot of different discounts that we offer for gameplay, for memberships, for active duty, and also veterans. And we've extended that to first responders and teachers and nurses. Certainly as a result of the pandemic, there's a lot of folks that have stepped up. And that is something that has been extremely popular over the last few years. This photo actually is from a program that we are involved in called Bunkers for Baghdad, which is we donate golf equipment to soldiers serving overseas. If we go to the next slide. That's one of our national partners, Make-A-Wish. I think everybody's familiar with them. Folds of Honor, that is a charity benefiting the surviving families of fallen heroes. Go to the next slide. Then we have a lot of local partnerships as well, and that's something we look to the local community to get involved with. A variety of different things. You see some photos here of some examples: soup kitchens, Adopt Highway. Really trying to embed our team within the local community. As I mentioned, we're going to have about 300 employees. Most, if not all, of those will be local. So really trying to get entrenched into the local community is very important to us as an organization. Next slide. So I'm going to share some photos. As I mentioned, I know a lot of you all have some renderings and some other photos from various perspectives in the packet, but I wanted to go and just actually share some photos of a comparable type of venue as what we're proposing here in Monona. If we can go to the next slide. This is a view of the front of the building. If you remember from the site plan, this is facing west towards the shopping center, towards the Floor and Decor. We've got a very modern, contemporary look with a lot of different building materials. I know we've got a material sample board, and I think there was something in your packet with the building innovation that called out materials. But really, it's a very attractive building. This is a look at it in the evening with some architectural accent lighting, but very appealing. We've opened the first three of these that we opened. One in Wichita, Kansas, one in Boise, Idaho, Vineyard, Utah. Since then, we've opened some in Mobile, Alabama, and Lafayette, Louisiana. They've all been very well received by the community and have been a situation in which we've had repeat customers on a weekly basis. So they've been very successful, and I'm confident that they would be successful here as well. Go to the next slide. This is just a view of the inside of essentially our atrium restaurant. So it's a two-story space with the restaurant and the bar and the video wall. One thing unique about Topgolf is we've got a lot of folks that come that want to play golf. There's food and beverage service in the hitting bays themselves, but then we have a separate restaurant where someone can come and just have lunch with their family and friends and maybe not play golf. So we have that optionality, and it really is a pretty unique and dynamic space as well for people, in this instance, may want to come here on a Saturday to watch the Badgers play football with some family and friends in a pretty neat environment. Go to the next slide. This is a view of the same space at night, just some different views. We do a lot of pop art and graphics within the space to make it more local and custom to the area that we're located at. So this is just an example of some of that. Next slide, please. This is a view from the hitting bay. So one thing good about Topgolf is we supply all of the golf equipment. These hitting bays can accommodate about 6 to 8 people. Again, full service food and beverage at the hitting bays themselves. We've got all the golf clubs, golf balls, all the technology within the hitting bays. The view out into the outfield as well. You get a sense of kind of the scale of the net poles as well. What we're proposing here, given the size of this venue, two-story venue, about 156 foot tall net poles. Those are painted kind of a sky gray. The netting is a kind of a nylon black mesh netting. So as you can see here, that pretty much is very transparent and disappears. And with the color of the net poles, our goal is to make that as less visually impactful as possible. So that's kind of how we arrived at that type of material, the coloring of it, and in most cases, it just pretty much blends into the background. Next slide, please. This is another view of the T-line, some of the technology that we have within the venue itself. There's camera technology and lighting that's part of the Top Tracer gameplay element. We've got another photo that shows this venue at night and the lighting impacts. But if we can go to the next slide. Okay, this is the outdoor patio. We've got some yard games, some other lounge seating, and just an area where folks can enjoy the outdoors as part of their visit to Topgolf. Next slide, please. This is what we call our Lux event space hitting bay. So these are a little bit larger that can accommodate private parties, corporate events, social events. They're kind of dual purpose. You have got roll-up doors on the hitting bay side, and then on the other end, on the lower level, there's roll-up doors too. So you get a opportunity to really have a combined event space and also hitting bay, so that if you're catering to a large crowd, there can be continuous networking and connecting with your other friends or colleagues as part of that event. So again, we've got a nice graphic art within this venue. This has been something that has been very well received from corporations and social events as well, as opposed to having a separate dedicated event space detached from the Topgolf gameplay area. Next slide, please. This is a view at night of what the venue looks like with the outdoor lighting. There's no stadium lights. We don't have lights on our net poles. We don't have lights on top of our roof. All of those lights are LED lights that are mounted to the underside of the canopy of the building, and they shine outward into the outfield or our driving range. And you can see that light pretty much dies out at the end of the outfield. The outfield's about 205 yards long. And then, just the parking lot lights are very common and standard for a shopping center. Shoebox, 90 degrees, light fixtures. But as you can see, this is a concern that a lot of communities have with respect to our lighting. And we do have the ability to dim the lights and calibrate the lights to make sure we're not impacting off-site properties. Next slide, please. We've prepared a little bit of a rendering here to see what this would look like on this property. In the foreground is Beltline. On the west side, you can see Floor and Decor. Certainly residential further behind, and certainly a ton of vegetation there. But this is a view kind of looking northeast towards the property, showing the parking lot, the building, how the net pole arrangement will be, and certainly the remaining office buildings further to the east. This gives you a kind of a good idea of how this vision will take shape on this property. I know I've covered a lot there. Any questions with respect to any of this of the presentation?
I'm sure we'll get into
Okay.
the questions and after the public hearing.
Yeah, sure.
But thank you very much for the presentation.
Yep.
Is there anyone else here that is here for the public hearing portion? Besides, I would love to hear from WPS. Yep. The terrific welcome.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Very exciting. My name is Deanne Bagley. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Communications at WPS, and happy to be here tonight. As you can see from the renderings, WPS is here to stay, and staying in that our main what we call corporate center. And we're actually renovating that building right now in hopes of the sale of our RKB building, which is our Ray Koenig Memorial Building, which currently has our corporate office and the executive office in it. But they'll all be moving into the bigger, larger, newer building at that corner of WPS and Broadway. So we are working in a remote environment at this point, but with the construction and remodeling of this new facility, the plan is to create a building that welcomes people to come in. And so we're, right now, today, post-pandemic, we're maybe 100, 150 people on campus on a good day. We're trying to get to about 250 with a warm, welcoming space. We're not going to be mandating like return to work like some companies, but we're certainly going to be creating an environment where they all want to come to the office. And having Topgolf next door could be a very awesome situation for team building, going for lunch. We're very excited, and it's been a wonderful working relationship with them, with the property as well. So we're fully in, going to be there. We think this will enhance our employees' experience and get more people on campus. And then we're working on our remodel. So we'll be done in November and doing a re-grand opening of our facility in the November time period. And just looking really forward to being in Monona and staying here.
Okay. Thank you. Terrific. Anyone else, either online or here in the room, that has, during the public hearing portion of this? Okay. Hearing none, then we will close the public hearing on this request and go to number 7B, which is the pre-hearing conference on the request of SWD Management LLC for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new golf entertainment venue at 5600 Gisholt Drive, corner of Gisholt Drive and Angle Street, case number 2-012-2024. Doug.
Thank you. So the request here is the construction of a golf entertainment venue at the corner of Gisholt Drive and Angle Street. Proposal would be approximately 36,000 square foot two-story building, 72 climate controlled bays. A lot of that has already been discussed, so I'll try and keep that brief. This proposal would be part of a proposed 11.5 acre site that is the current Southtown Office Park, kind of at the corner there of Gisholt, with the remainder being the western portion of the WPS campus. As far as the process, that's certainly one of the things I'd like to discuss this evening. I outlined this in the staff report, but there are elements that would be a part of this request as well, including a certified survey map, street vacation of Engel Street, as well as the relocation of associated utilities, stormwater improvements across the two private lots as well. Given these elements and the scale of the request, the suggestion from staff is to separate them out, to have the zoning permit request for the use that is being considered this evening, with a lot of those items sort of the responsibility of the developer. That's how it's really been broken out so far already, the conversations that we've had. So the CSM and some of those elements, and certainly anything being conditioned on the other, but just the sequencing of this, I think, is worthy of discussion, and how some of these elements would take place. There have been discussions internally with staff already about some of the utilities, some of the elements there. But I think that that's certainly something to discuss this evening to give clarity as this moves forward into sort of the final design. As far as the land use, the property is located within the Community Design District, the CDD, and the construction, as well as the change in use, necessitates the zoning permit. As far as uses within the CDD, it's to be a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, or open spaces, which you realize the goal of the comprehensive plan. The 2016 comp plan classifies this as commercial use in both the current and the future land use maps. The adjacent uses are pretty varied, with big box retail to the west, professional office to both the north and the east, and then, of course, the site is bound by the Beltline Highway to the south. A couple elements that I wanted to call out from the comprehensive plan. The land use section encourages the development and redevelopment of efficient, well-planned and designed land uses. And then a policy that I thought appropriate to this was highly planned mixed-use activity centers, including shopping, employment, housing, and recreational opportunities. And also another element of the comprehensive plan was the economic development section that calls for growth, providing a balanced economy with a mixture of uses, And as we've heard this evening, this is a pretty unique entertainment venue that I think it's expected to be a regional draw with employment as well. This is part of the 1989 Broadway Corridor Plan. The development site is within that. This is the west area as listed within that, and it's deemed a commercial center. There are no design standards for this section, with that really being reserved for the east. This would most likely be removing the existing office tenants as discussed, and really I appreciate WPS being here this evening to share some more detail on that. But as far as the land use, the suggestion for the commission this evening is how this entertainment venue aligns with the commercial future use classification, if it meets CDD performance standards, and how it can integrate with other adjacent properties in the area, as well as the possible future development that we've heard to the north. And one thing worth mentioning for that is the expectation with that is that we'd have a GDP, PIP, kind of the General Development Plan, precise implementation plan, and that would sort of flesh that out for that area to the north of the site. So sort of considering the compatibility there and some of the sort of synergies that may be between the two different uses. As far as parking, the commercial use standards would be 1 stall per 300 square feet of gross floor area. And then for restaurants and bars, it would be 1 space for each 25 square feet if a seating plan is not provided. I kind of gave the breakout of the parking in the staff report. I'll let people read that. I won't sort of run through the specifics. I think some discussion points this evening would be the indoor-outdoor space for the restaurants, the significant patio spaces that they have as far as the calculations, how we would like to categorize that. In addition to the employment, the number of staff that are listed, expectations for that, and again, sort of the pretty unique nature of the product, sort of that entertainment use, probably with a longer stay duration as well. One of the options here that I wanted to point out is the developer here does have control of the floor and the core site to the west as well. So the opportunity there has already been discussed, the opportunity for sort of shared parking agreements that could be in place with the possibility of that, let's say for staff or something like that, to locate. And honestly, some of the proximity would be very comparable to the parking on site. That leads to the site design and circulation. There have been discussions internally with police, fire, and public works discussing the future of Gisholt, sort of the north-south to the west of the site here. The recommendation would be that be signed for no parking, potentially a sort of sidewalk or a crosswalk to allow for the parking to Southtown to allow for that overflow. And so really considering the sidewalk design of this site and sort of the pedestrian accessibility, again, just given the scale of the parking lot, how pedestrians move through that, the hours of operation, how the folks will remain safe even after dark as well. A trip generation technical memo was included for consideration as well, and that was based on the 130,000 square feet of commercial office space that is on the site within the proposed redevelopment area. There was discussion and sort of the metrics we used of both a high turnover restaurant use, but also a golf entertainment use. Sort of the highlights of that were that during the week, sort of versus the peak of the commercial, that there would be no impact on parking or on traffic, I'm sorry, and for the weekends, that there would be a slight increase, but nothing sort of out of the ordinary that would necessarily trigger that. So with that being said, the regional draw of this does warrant discussion of traffic generation, the existing uses at their peak, and infrastructure do appear capable of handling the expected trips. And again, we have been sort of having preliminary discussions internally as well about this already, what the street networks and things may look like. As far as the building, it's a 2-story building facing east with 41 feet in height at its peak. The exterior of the materials board has been shared this evening with ephes and metal treatments, storefront glass for a modern aesthetic. Different materials are used to break up the plane, sort of the linear plane, especially on the western face. And that may be something to discuss if there's any more differentiation there that may be requested prior to the formal consideration. The storage, outdoor storage is screened per city standards. There is a cedar fence that would be included that would enclose the outdoor patio spaces as well as the miniature golf. The main element of the architectural massing is the poles, the barrier netting, and the net poles that have been shown. The renderings were included in the presentation as well as the packet. The pole height is not to exceed 156 feet at the highest point, and that's based on the finished floor elevation of the building. They're typical standards for the company and based upon their best practice and what they use elsewhere in the country. These are typically painted light gray with 1-inch mesh netting used. And this steps up to the maximum height with a lower height sort of closer to the building, and then maximum height as you proceed to the west. Certainly the commission should discuss this. Comparable heights in the area, if they could be provided, and certainly the rendering that was provided this evening provides some context for that as well. Hours of operation would be Sunday to Thursday, 9 a.m. to midnight, with Friday and Saturday hours from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. As far as stormwater, those discussions have begun because there would be sort of the repurposing, and again with the development of the campus, the redevelopment of WPS campus, there would be elements there that need to be discussed, most likely sort of shared stormwater elements between the two as well, between WPS as well as this development site. The lighting, a photometric plan would be needed, but the materials in the packet do show the lighting that's needed for the gameplay, but also pretty minimal sort of light trespass as you exit outside of the nets. Again, given the hours, the extended hours of operation, parking lot lighting, sort of safety for visitors would be important, and all things to be seen in the final submittal. The landscaping, the typical standards are based upon the number of parking stalls. With the 350 proposed here, it would be over 5,000 landscaping points, 29 canopy trees. I think one of the things worth discussing here, there's a couple opportunities possibly for sort of the combination of the landscape islands, potentially, sort of larger islands that we've seen used elsewhere. Typical standards would be 1 island every 12 stalls for linear or 24 for double stacked. But there may be the opportunity to support larger canopy trees if that's broken up a little differently. So certainly something worth discussing, as well as the possibility of screening, possibility around the netting, or some buffering as well, possibly with the belt line. So elements to discuss there. And finally, the green space for the landscaping as well. The materials do include that this would be 27% green space of the 11.5 acres. There's not a sort of detailed breakdown. The expectation is that includes the outfield, which I believe is artificial turf. And so discussing that if, while it's not pervious, does it meet the stated goals of sort of the visual impact there? And if there's opportunity for the landscaping to help sort of soften and meet some of those goals. Signage, conceptual signage was included, again, as part of the pre-hearing materials. This includes wall signage on sort of 3 faces of the building, as well as the freestanding sign in the outfield. This would be a 20-foot tall freestanding sign measuring over 800 square feet. A pylon sign adjacent to the belt line, as well as 2 high-definition screens that would be proposed at the end, sort of at the western end of the site. Staff definitely recognizes, the scale of the project, the need for signage and identification. But certainly at this pre-hearing is a good opportunity to discuss some of the other elements that are a little more unique than maybe what we've seen elsewhere, and to provide some guidance to the applicant as well with that. Finally, these were shared with department heads. Certainly there's been discussion taking place. Park Director Anderson's comments are included in there as well, supporting recreational opportunities in Monona. That's everything. Thank you.
Did you breathe in there?
Take a drink now.
Great, thanks very much, Doug. Rob, since you've stopped writing, would you like to take the first swing, so to speak?
Why am I going first?
All puns intended.
Sure, I can go first. I'm not a golfer, but I won't hold that against my my comments. I won't use that. I have to say, first time I saw this, I was a little shocked because they're impactful. Like these things, you see them coming from a long ways away. So my initial reaction was kind of shocked because, without too much thought, it's going to be the most identifiable thing in Monona, kind of from the outside looking in anyways. That said, after looking at the packet and reconsidering, I'm intrigued. I have a lot of questions about it, but I think the use is reasonable in this space. I think it has a lot of potential positives as far as bringing kind of economic development to this area and kind of sparking this area. And I have trouble visualizing other things that might come along that would do the same sort of thing. So I'm keeping a real open mind about that. Well, in no particular order, I'll kind of just get into some of my questions and then comments. First off, the green space requirement of 30% is under at 27%, and that's including the infield of the driving range. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, maybe our engineer can speak to that, but the outfield is impervious. It is a turf, but it's not a pervious surface. So, Drew, can you speak to that calculation a little bit more?
Drew Mears with Beer Bicker. The outfield is not included in that 30 or 27%.
It's not.
It is not.
Oh, okay.
It's pure green space in the stormwater areas.
Okay.
And at this point, everything we've kind of done is blocky and conceptual, so that also doesn't include the small landscape islands in the parking lot, so that number is going to grow as we develop the plans and dial things in further.
Okay, that's great to hear. I'm going to come back to this one. As far as site circulation, is One City School, is there part of their fire access route, that turnaround at the end of that street by the parking lot? And is that going to be impacted? Do you know? I couldn't recall, but it's
Dad, can
it's
we
worth
pull up
looking
that color site plan from the presentation? Maybe that's good to
at the end of Ingle Street.
refer to.
Chris may have an answer.
If you don't mind, I could answer.
Yeah.
Please.
I've been seeing plans from One City Schools, and I've actually been work for Findorf in there, and they have a goal, they're gonna have a turnaround that we approved down at that south end, and it'll be emergency access only coming out to the west. So you see it right now, they have cones or barricades up right now. So yes, it will be a secondary entrance and exit for emergency traffic, but not for regular traffic.
Okay, so that'd be going away.
No, that'd still be there. The emergency access would still be there.
Oh, it'd go through the parking lot, or
No, go.
there's a dry detention area.
Yeah, I guess with the, excuse me, that would go away with that pond the way it's shown, unless they made an alternate arrangement, I suppose, through WPS. Well, they do, you know, to have the south one, they'd have to have some access somehow, maybe through WPS's lot.
It's an item for consideration.
That'd be great consideration, because we worried about emergency responders if there's something blocking that north entrance.
Right.
Okay, something to look into. Question, the north property line as shown, the kind of the future development area, is that the right-of-way line, or why is the right-of-way for Broadway that far out, or why is there that gap between Broadway and that property line?
I can answer that too. I did a lot of work for WPS, and their front parking stalls are actually just into that right-of-way, so yes, the right-of-way is that wide there. And they were given permission to build them like that. That right-of-way is extremely large there.
Okay.
Steve, did you want to add anything to what Chris said?
He's correct. I mean, we're the prosecuting.
Just remember that answer.
Yeah.
Is there potential of that moving? Are they vacating any of that right away? Is it state right away? County?
To my knowledge, no. We're the prosecuting the new survey done to verify what you're seeing right now is what's being pulled from access lane, but we believe that to be the property line.
Okay.
We want you talking to them.
Right, I was just going to say, I think Jackson wants you to spin to the mic when you talk next time, if you could. That's great. Rob, go ahead.
Another kind of out of order here, but that patio area, this is going to be a noisy space, so noise attenuation should be a concern. I know these are put all over the place. This is on one of the busiest spots in the city. And if you've ever been out to Waypoint and sat on their patio, it's loud.
And just to that point, we've oriented this, so if you can see on this plan here, the outdoor space is the south end, kind of facing Beltline, So it will be buffered by the building itself from, properties to the north. The area on the north end is kind of our receiving area, where we have deliveries that may be occurring throughout the day. But the outdoor patio is on that south side that, can't get the
It's the loud
cursor
side.
there.
Yeah, I think you're talking,
Yes,
you're talking
so-
about the
So
customer.
there's ambient noise there already with roadway and things of that nature.
Right. So I don't know what can be done, but my point is that it,
He's getting you the opposite way.
Yeah,
trying to
you're
say
talking about
we
the
should watch out
customers.
for the noise from the highway, and he's saying, well, we're keeping it away from the residents.
Right.
You guys are talking opposite things.
We'll have some
I don't,
landscaping
it's
to
fine right
soften
there,
that.
but it's just a point of consideration. That's gonna be really loud.
You're saying the highway is going to be really loud?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've got that, if I can remember the plans correctly, that's boxed in by some cedar panels to
Okay.
help shield
That's right.
some of that.
Well, there'll be some landscaping to buffer some of that as well.
Okay. The digital screens on the far end of the field, is there any issue with Beltline and DOT with that? How big are, like, those seem big in the renderings.
Yeah,
and I
they-
just wonder if
Sure.
the DOT is gonna be upset about that.
They're oriented towards the hitting bay, so there should only be, mostly be visible from customers within the building, but from various perspectives, there can be sight lines in there. Those are proposed to be 30 by 50 video boards, so think of going to a ball game, almost like a jumbotron type of thing at the end of the outfield. But those are just visual, there's no audio associated with that.
Understood. I'm just giving you something that you might wanna confirm, because they have requirements that
Okay.
you should be aware of sooner than later in your development process, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think there's impact necessarily from Monona residents, given where they're at and where they're facing, but
You're suggesting it just may be a distraction to motorists?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if it is, but it could save you a lot of headaches.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something Doug and I have talked about for sure. One thing that we did early on was push this building a little bit further north. Originally, we had it tucked all the way to the Beltline, and we created that buffer with the parking there and pushed this building further to the north. And I believe we're about 200 feet away from the north edge of that Beltline. And I think we could pretty easily do a quick rendering or a study, but most of that traffic that's going to be coming eastbound, their visual is going to be blocked by that Floor and Decor building by the time they get past to the point where those screens are going to be visible.
Yeah, Doug,
Okay.
maybe we can get to that rendering at the end of
Well, that's a
the
good
presentation.
point you bring up. I was gonna suggest that, if possible, to have some renderings from ground level to help
Sure.
us understand. Like, it was a great rendering at the end of the
Yeah.
presentation to help how it sits into the site, but how it impacts from a ground level, I think that would be very helpful
Yep.
from both Broadway and the Beltline. It was mentioned in the staff report about the T-line heights across the Beltline there. Do you know how tall they are, the transmission lines?
Yes.
And if I missed that, forgive me.
No, we're still working on our survey right now, so we just recently got that information. So the ATC poles are 144 feet in comparison to the 156-foot net poles. And the ground elevation is very similar, so we'll see that same kind of 19-foot difference at the peak elevation.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you. This maybe goes without saying, but if a more formalized overflow parking agreement with Floor and Decor comes in, that would be reflected in the site plans for safety and pedestrian access connecting the two uses. I'm sure you've thought of that. Landscaping, we would expect it to kind of meet the scale and level of the project. And then my final comment is something having to do with, I don't know what the lifespan of a facility like this is, but being that it's such a visually impactful proposal, I would be interested in some sort of decommissioning plan associated with this development, because, if 40 years, if people don't like golf anymore, I would hate for the city to get stuck with 150-foot poles as this kind of relic. I've seen this in other types of development as part of an approval. So I'd be curious to hear what the other commission thinks of this in the city, frankly. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Nice presentation. I admire your timing, considering we're entering US Open week.
Yes, sir.
And I'm probably should admit that I am a former member of Topgolf. I don't think there was any communication in the packet that we received that said it was Topgolf.
No.
So I didn't know that until you arrived.
Yes, sir.
If you haven't been to one of these facilities, I would recommend you go. They're professional, they're clean, they're very well organized, staffed well, so on, so on. I think the lighting is exceptionally done and that there's no stadium lighting. So it's not like a high school football field or anything like that. It's very well hidden, which was probably one of my concerns. The size of the poles, though, I mean, people are still slicing the ball, obviously, so they seem very tall, extremely tall. I guess some of the questions I would have is the 3% green space I think is important. Not just because it's 3%, but it's 3% on a large piece of property. So I would do as best as you can to get as close as you can to that requirement. You showed a lot of very exciting interior pictures, photographs. A question I would have is, are there different standards for instance, if you have a facility like this in Scottsdale, and then you put another one in Des Moines, is it a version, a Des Moines version, I'll say, or a B version that's a little smaller, a little less extravagant, and so forth? Could you speak to that?
Sure, we have different venue prototypes, and that has evolved over the past 5 or 6 years that allow us to bring Topgolf to different size markets. Scottsdale is kind of a unique venue in itself, but it's an older one too, and we've made a lot of improvements over the years based on learnings from customers and operators and things of that nature. So there are prototypes. Certainly they all fit within the context of the property and the surroundings, but they're very similar for each prototype, and that really is contingent on the size of the market. The last thing we wanted to do is to either underbuild or overbuild in a market like Monona. We're going to be entering into a long-term lease with Steve here that will hopefully make us a member of the community for many, many years to come. And that's our commitment. But I think we all certainly partnered together to make this as successful as we can and viable for the future.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chapman, just curious, which Topgolfs have you been to before?
I spent a lot of time in Arizona.
Okay.
I used to.
Ball flies a little bit further out there than it does in the Midwest and the East Coast, but that's really the reasoning behind the height of the net poles. It's for health and safety. Last thing we want is for ball escape to be, within an adjacent property or a roadway or something of that sort. So it's certainly a lot of advancement in learnings over the past, and we have found that since we've kind of met this new standard over the past few years for the net ball heights, we've had very few situations where a ball escapes from the net.
Yeah, again, I think this is an appropriate use for this piece of property. The office market is extremely struggling, as we probably all know. I think it's next to the Beltline, so and I think it's a testament to what I'll say is the improved retail quality of Southtown, and I think this would be a nice extension of that. So I guess my last comment would be I applaud that you give discount to military people, and I think you should begin giving some discounts to people that have handicaps over a certain amount as well.
We'll take that into consideration.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Susan?
Okay. Aside from having some concern, even though I know the small business market, rental market is tough, we do have a lot of small businesses there that will lose their places, and I think that's regrettable. But on the other hand, I do see this as a very positive development for Monona in general, for the reasons that have just been stated. I've never seen Topgolf. I had heard about it, and some of the pictures you showed gave me a better idea. Now I am curious to drive up and see what one looks like, just because it's so massive. But I think it makes sense to me that it will draw people from around, and it will help our other retail businesses. It may bring in another restaurant somewhere. I mean, I could see it contributing in that way, in addition to the employment opportunities past just the construction. You know, I think the screen, I worried about the screen also, but I remember when they first started those digital billboards on the Beltline. I used to live on the south end of Toniawatha, and you could see one of them from my house, and I thought it was just so obnoxious. And as a result, I noticed it every time I drove by. Now I don't even see it. But so as far as DOT, it'd be worth maybe running by them, but since they allow those, I can't imagine these would be an issue, and they'll be set in quite a bit further than those billboards are. I would have a question about the pylon sign, just because we generally don't allow pylon signs anymore, and I'm not sure why, because I think this will be so visible from the Beltline, and there's other signage, why a pylon sign would be necessary. Do you want to say something about that, about why? I gather the pylon sign is somewhere where it will face the Beltline. I mean,
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug, for that. Pylon is proposed kind of in perpendicular to the
Oh, I'm
Beltline.
sorry. Yeah, I see.
So as you're traveling east and west, you'd be able to see the signage. You know, we're potentially be brand new to the market here. A lot of folks may not be familiar with Topgolf, never been to a Topgolf, so trying to have some brand awareness to generate that. Certainly proposing some signage on the building as well. But
Right.
that really won't be visible until you're
To get
passing.
past before, yeah, I guess
So-
because of the inset, yeah.
So
yeah.
trying to get people to a position where they can identify, this is Topgolf, I need to get off the next exit, or whatever it may be, before they pass that exit.
Okay.
But it's really just for some awareness. It is proposed to be a multi-tenant sign, so Steve certainly is trying to generate some additional development as part of this as well, and those tenants may have some interest. So trying to discourage single-tenant signs that were, obviously will clutter the landscape there, and try to have a nice, attractive multi-tenant sign. But that's the general location is where Doug has his cursor.
Yeah, I missed that on the map. I see that now.
And then
All right,
you
well.
probably have seen some of the renderings and building elevations where there's some signage identification kind of on the end of the southern wall, and then just some on the front of the building, and then on the northern wall facing Broadway. So for the size of the building, the signage pretty much is understated. It fits within the scale of the building. We're not trying to do anything that's too over the top.
Right.
The pylon sign, I think, is very tastefully done as well, so just something for consideration. I think it's proposed as maybe a 30-foot tall sign, is that right? I believe so.
Right. Then I think I would, otherwise agree that, I'm glad to hear the turf is not included in the, even the 27%. I would also like to see you get to the 30%. I would think we could be flexible as far as larger islands in the parking areas instead of the one every 12 stalls that we use now. But that might be a way to capture more. You said that wasn't included in the original calculation, so that's another way. Because there are some, that's a very it's heavy with trees right now along that street, and it'd be nice to see some of that come back, even if those very trees aren't retained. Let's see. Yeah, and I think the idea to have a formal agreement with the part of the parking lot of Floor and Decor toward the Beltline would make sense. I know there are some other outlets there as well, but because it seems to me you will need some of that parking for sure, and maybe that could be designated, and even designated employee parking.
Yes.
Would be worth working out. Let's see. I do think it's an appropriate use, as I said, and an exciting one really for the community. I think, we had a lot of comment about people looking for that type of athletic entertainment venue. And I'm happy to hear WPS is committed to staying as well. That's huge. I think, the other thing that Rob raised about the emergency vehicle traffic is something to follow up on as well. I don't really have anything to add. Otherwise, I think the materials, it's hard for me to get a picture of what the whole, we'll get that later, but look appropriate for this type of building, and so it's good.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, Susan. Corey?
I will say I had a similar reaction at first to Rob, and then I've been thinking about it for the last few days, and then with your presentation as well, and hearing some of the other questions. I do think, well, and I'll tell you, one of the concerns I had was about, there's not a lot of residences, but there are the ones right across from Broadway, and I was thinking about that, but the renderings of the lighting, and knowing that you've been in other communities and you've addressed some of those lighting concerns, and that it can be adjusted up or down, I mean, I think that is a big consideration. So I think it's pretty in line with a lot of the discussions that we've had at the commission. We've had a couple of different proposals in this area that we haven't felt were a good use for not this site specifically, but in this general area. And since we've made some of those decisions, we've seen these other proposals that I think are really going to be making a big difference on that part of the community. And I'm excited about the possibility of having some additional uses in that future proposed development site as well, and what might be a good fit there. I mean, in addition, we did have, I don't know how serious they were, but One City Schools had talked about a recreational facility as well that they were pretty interested in. And so thinking about the synergy that could potentially happen if that were to ever go forward would be kind of exciting for this area as well. So from that perspective, I think this is a good use for this site. I don't know about a 30-foot pylon sign when your posts or your poles are 150 feet. I know it'll have the name Topgolf, but if someone's going to Topgolf and they see those poles, they probably know that they're there. But
Well, we do have competitors out there. I don't know if people are familiar with Pin Seekers up in DeForest, so we're trying to distinguish ourselves from those that are similar but not Topgolf. There's actually a Lux venue in Milwaukee as well. So you've got these one-offs that are out there. So, but point well taken.
One of the things, well, there's a couple things that I just had questions about that you didn't mention in your presentation. And with respect to the businesses that are in the office park, at one point we had information about how many were getting, like, how many businesses were actually in those buildings. And I was just curious if you knew offhand how many businesses there are and won't have a spot.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. So I don't have the exact number to a T, but Brett Riemann and Brian Spanos own that office building park right now. I do not. I have it under contract to purchase, subject to them vacating at closing. And the majority of those tenants know that there's a goal by the owner of the site to demolish those buildings, because they had previously brought forth a project a couple of years ago to do apartments there. So when they did that, a good amount of tenants had vacated the building at that time because they didn't want the uncertainty of where they were going. But I believe that as of today, I believe there are around 60 tenants in those buildings, anywhere from as small as 100 square feet to as large as 4,000 square feet. Most of the tenants, or all of the tenants, either have short leases, or they have notice periods that give them what they felt was enough time to relocate and find another home. Most of the agreements that the current landlord has with some of the bigger tenants that have relocation costs and things of that nature include dollars from the landlord there to relocate to another business park somewhere in the community.
Okay.
So.
I just, that's a consideration too, you know, we want Monona to be a home for everyone as well, so, home for every business, I should say, and every person. But we don't want to have a lot of businesses that call Monona their community, their home, not have a space to go, so that's helpful to know, thank you. The other thing that you didn't mention was the mini golf. Is that is that indoor or outdoor? Is that happening?
That would be an outdoor mini golf. So right now we're thinking that may be not as part of the initial build out, but something we would add in the future. That's generally in that same location as the outdoor patio on the south side of the building. Really, given the climate, you don't get year-round use, so that may be something that becomes a future addition. But trying to preserve the right to have that use.
Okay. Have you done that at other locations?
We have, yes,
Okay.
yes. And just depending on the size of the space, we certainly do have enough room to accommodate like a 9-hole mini golf, which is pretty much more than anybody really wants to play anyhow in most instances. But yeah, no, it's been very successful. There are often times where our venues are very busy on the weekends, and there could be 2 or 3 hour wait. We've got a reservation system in place now that cuts down on that wait, but this gives an opportunity for somebody to, whether they're kids or whatnot, to keep everybody entertained until they get into a hitting bay or whatnot. So we found that it's a pretty nominal fee, $5, $10, whatever it is. Play all you want out there. There's food and beverage service out there as well. So we found it's pretty appealing for families, especially.
I think it would be a popular amenity if you did that at this site as well. As far as some of the more specific things, a lot of it has been touched on. One of the things, I think the staff report mentioned there isn't a sidewalk on the parking lot, and I think it's such a big parking lot. Having a sidewalk on that north side, so that someone parking down on the far east to walk all the way to the front, I think that would be really helpful.
Yes, ma'am, we have that on there.
Oh,
And keep in
okay.
mind, this is just a very conceptual site plan,
Yeah,
so more details will come, but
That's good.
that
Okay.
is the intent, to have that sidewalk there.
And we talked about the drivers going east and whether or not the screens would be an issue. What about the drivers going west and all the lighting and the 72 lighting in the hitting bays? Would that be a distraction to the road as they're coming around the site? There's not a big building in the way there. There's just the parking lot.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we shifted the building further to the north and tilted a little bit, so that you wouldn't have it directly into the Beltline Highway. It'd be facing more towards the parking lot of the office building there.
Okay.
So I know you guys may be working some late hours there, but it should really shouldn't impact anybody, given the nighttime use of it. So we've taken that into consideration as well and shifted it away from
Okay.
Beltline.
And I think the other comments have already been raised, so thank you.
Thank you.
Chris?
Okay. I think this is awesome. I think when we first developed Southtown, we had the movie theaters, which were a huge draw, and they really helped everybody around there, all the businesses, all the uses. They brought people in and kept it vibrant. And this would keep that commercial area vibrant. I think this would be outstanding for the area. I'd love to own some land around it. But I think it would be, it's not just a draw for Monona, it's a draw for the whole greater Madison area. And we worry about this commercial area and what kind of uses we can do. This will up the game. I mean, this is a game changer for our commercial district. We want to maintain commercial districts, and all of us, all municipalities are struggling maintaining commercial districts and the integrity of them. And I think this really is the one that will pump lifeblood back into that Southtown area. Not that you haven't been doing a good job of filling those spots, but this is a whole different level of it. So overall, I think it's outstanding. Mine are all random too. Number one, I would have looked you up and gotten a little background on you, but like somebody said, we weren't told what this was until tonight, so I couldn't do my research. Your net poles, I'm not as worried about decommissioning, because you know what, the city doesn't own it. Mr. Dorn owns it, and those are his problem. If Topgolf leaves, then he's got to do something to rehab the site. To me, that's a negotiation between him and Topgolf. I don't recall where we've done it anywhere else, and it's not hazardous material. It's just some 156-foot poles, as well as a building. So I don't see where it's a hazard to the city, and I don't know why we do this one instead of another one, but you know, I'm open to whatever people want to think about it. You have mentioned there that you have a 20-foot sign in the outfield. I don't see it. What is it? What's it do? How's it visible? What's it for?
Yeah,
I must have missed it.
can we go back to one of the photos, please? No, it's really just as a identification. There's no backing to it. It's not a double-sided, it's a single-sided sign that faces the T-line, faces the driving range component.
How high is it?
It's about a 12 by, don't quote me on this, I think we had this information in the packet. Do we have that exact? It's about.
See that's the two big screens.
No, that's not it.
Screens, but I don't see the sign there.
Yeah, we have.
The application letter, the specifics of the sign were.
The specifics, do we have a picture of it, or where it is, or what's it?
We do have a photo of it.
You might, I don't recall we had one.
20-foot tall.
Yeah, at about 20, is that
So it's 20 feet tall, and you've got two 30-foot screens there. Is it between them? Is it?
It's within the outfield itself.
Oh, it's in the outfield.
That's right.
I got you.
20 feet tall. I think it's a 12 by 30 sign.
Okay, that's fine. That kind of gets me to your other screens too, and there's been some comments.
Yeah.
The one thing I know we don't want is there's going to be a lot of information moving back and forth, and if they're visible from the Beltline eastbound, people are going to try to quick read, and they're going to take their eyes off the road because they're going to see what's on your screen at the time.
Yeah, well, just to be completely candid with everybody, it's very doubtful that we will put those high-definition screens out in the outfield.
Oh.
We would rather put the static sign out there, the Topgolf sign. So we can actually pull that up on one of the photos.
Is that in the presentation, this evening's presentation, or in the packet?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So it should be one of the photos of one of the venue photos, and you can see it in the background. So it's a static sign.
Okay.
It's only really visible when you're on the T-line. We've got a photo that you can see.
Well,
I thought that was in the rendering package. There's a couple of photos of the T-line, and I think you can see it in the background. Just click on that one. There.
You can see it in
It's
the
hard to see with the lighting in here, but yes, that is it. Check on.
Interesting, we have sunset.
You can see it a
on
little
the
bit better
east.
there. That's the
Second sun.
sunrise there.
There you go.
Yeah, so that is the sign. I don't know if we can zoom in on that a little more. We can provide some more details to that effect, or an actual.
Now, if it's a static sign, it's a whole different thing.
Yes, sir.
because Now it's
Yes,
not
sir.
a distraction
That's correct.
to the drivers, and I think that's what
correct.
everybody else is trying to get at. We're real careful about moving signs and all those types of things on high-volume roads, and this is, I don't
Yes,
remember the traffic count's over 100,000 vehicles. You couldn't pick a better spot in south central Wisconsin.
Yeah, this wouldn't be visible from off-site at all, it'd be visible from the
Okay,
T-line.
well, that was my whole point, and if there are moving signs or something that would be distraction to drivers, then Steve's original suggestion of maybe we'll just do a sightline study or something might be appropriate to see if there's something that'd be in their sightline. Now, if it's a static sign, totally, that's within your hitting area, that's a totally different game, I think.
Yeah, we don't know how that will be viewed. Sometimes different municipalities view that as almost like an interior sign because it's not meant to be visible from anything outside of the venue
The
itself.
difference between not meant to be visible and is visible.
No, yes, sir, I understand.
So absolutely not meant to be is good, as long as it isn't, and that gets to, I'm gonna go totally out of my order, but there are a lot of really nice young oak trees that WPS planted when they did their major campus. When you got rid of Engel and built the corporate center that you're talking about now, it would be really nice to be able to save those. They give, I know you wanna walk the tightrope between, you want visibility, but to be able to have those at that lower level, then some of these distractions you have, if there would be a movable sign, or if there's other things that, lighting that would be a distraction to drivers, you've got a great buffer there and a beautiful light. For a reason, WPS planted a bunch of, I think they're white swamp oaks, you see them? There are a lot of young ones, and they're really nice, and you're really shoehorning your detention, your water quality in here, so it's something to be thoughtful of when you're doing that, and they don't really like you to grade right up tight to their trunks, you probably know that, so I'm really going back and forth. But when it comes to the water quality design, of course, you know that these ponds are for all of WPS's area, and some of those buildings and impervious surfaces are leaving, but a lot of them aren't, so it will be a little bit of a calculation for you to try to merge that old stuff minus what's not there, plus the new stuff. You say that the outfield is impervious. What's underneath it? What's it laid on, the turf?
Asphalt.
Oh, that's definitely impervious, okay.
So
So
we've
it's not
done-
like a field where you put it on clear stone and have a drainage system.
We've done that before, where it's compacted stones, almost like a road base. But we found, unfortunately, through years of doing that, it just structurally don't hold up over time.
Okay.
There's not a lot of vehicles going out there just to service the outfield maintenance vehicles, so this gives it more longevity
So,
and structural integrity as well.
so you're gonna be tight for your water quality. You may end up even going underground with something if you have to. But I would just ask that you watch that the best you can, because it does give a little bit of a buffer, and you'll still see your facility. But it would give some of that ground level buffer for people trying to crane their neck and see what's going on there. I mean, your location is great. I'm jumping again, I'll go up the traffic study. We have nowhere in Monona that is better set up for this kind of traffic than this spot. When we did Walmart, we had to put in roundabouts and get them down because we're worried about queuing distances. We're just far enough off of the Beltline intersection with Southtown that there's plenty of queuing, but it's right there. I can't think of an area in Monona where we could handle traffic better than this spot right here. And the reason for that was Southtown, of course. So as far as traffic goes, I think it's a slam dunk to put it in here. And if there's an extra 100 cars somewhere someday, that's minor in the traffic that those roads handle. So I'm really jumping around now. Additional parking, we talked about additional parking. We talk about parking a lot at this commission. If you've watched any meetings or even saw the one before we talked about it, I have no sense for your parking needs, and I think we're gonna be somewhat reliant on you, what you need. I'm going to assume you're gonna build a facility that can hold all your customers.
Yes, sir.
So the ideal situation we have here, what's your timeline for building this?
Well, we'd love to be under construction next year.
Okay. So ideally, we have a spot that you're putting it in. We don't know. You have a really good idea if you have enough parking. We don't know. But we can always have a condition where we have them come back to get additional parking, but we have a huge parking lot that's not being used right next door. We have undeveloped land to the north from the same developer. So it gives us a chance to have this thing up and operational before all these lands are developed to see if there's a real parking need. We can have a condition on here about future parking if needed, but if it turns out that they actually know what they're doing and 350 stalls takes care of their needs, well, you like the way I worded that.
No.
then we don't have an issue with additional parking. So I'm sure we can craft something that talks about, we want to see where the parking lands, but I'm assuming that you're not going to have all this developed before they're developed.
No.
And not even close, I'm assuming. So it's a great situation for us. We're kind of like in the dark. We feel like we don't know what you should have, but nobody ever wants enough parking, so we have to have more parking or have it available. And this is a great situation for us on a use like this that we don't know much about as far as what your needs are. So I see it as we have a chance here to be able to do some things with the parking. The pylon sign actually is allowed in this district. We don't have a lot of areas, but this is a particular district where we do allow pylon signs. What we may have an issue with, though, is off-site signage, and you're well aware of that. So if you're looking to put a tenant sign from somewhere off-site to this, that's something we don't generally allow in our code. So that's something we have to talk very seriously about. But the pylon sign, you showed the rendering, I think it's an attractive sign. It's, it looks like it's not overlit or anything, it's just really downplayed, and it'd probably be one of the better looking pylon signs along that stretch, and it is a laudable use there. Your overall signage on the building, it seems like a lot, but then again, the scale of the building, I guess I want to see it. Again, when it says tenant, it's a little different than seeing actually who it is with the logo.
Can we go back to the photo?
No, I saw it in your presentation, I just, when we prepared for these meetings,
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
And the notes get written, actually, believe it or not, most of the notes get written before we come here. So anyway, I like to see it. I agree, it doesn't look like it's oversigned, and a lot of it is how it fits on the building and what it is, but we'll certainly be looking at that. Back to your parking lot, this is a secondary exit for the WPS campus. One thing I think would be, I know you've got a lot shoehorned in here, but if you could make that north drive a 30-foot drive, because that one's gonna have more traffic. Looks like you've got it just drawn up. You don't have a lot of room, but you have it drawn up with a couple 24-foot drive aisles real tight. At least
through the parking lot?
Yeah, through that north one through the parking lot, because that's also where WPS Drive hooks into there. It's the old, well, not old Engle Street south of that, but this was, I mean, Engle Street ran right through here. When WPS had 4 buildings, we said, sure, we'll vacate it for you. Now we're down to what, two, but we don't hear about the second one much. So that one's gonna have more traffic, and as far as what you can get to, I don't know what you can get to, but it's also nice for your customers, because that'll be some of the most used parking, and when you have a little extra room to swing in, it doesn't hurt. But take a look and see if you can do something to let that traffic get through there a little easier. You have a lot of LED lighting on your building. It looks really good. One condition you could anticipate is if glare becomes an issue, the Plan Commission has the right to come back to you and say you've got to tone it down a little bit. If, for example, it's a problem for drivers on the Beltline, that would be the biggest thing I see from where you're at. You're at a great location for it. Like someone else said, you're not around residential. It's a perfect place for it. But if all of a sudden everybody said, boy, those lights I can't see when I'm heading westbound on the Beltline, we'd come back and say, can you come see us?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you have enough experience where it probably won't be a problem, but we won't treat you any differently than we do every other applicant.
Understood, yes, sir. Understood. Again, the beauty of that is we have the ability to control the lighting output.
Right.
So
Right.
in many communities, we have to calibrate
Yeah.
before we go live with the venue. And
It's walking that line between
That's
your
right.
visibility that you want and, as
That's
far
right.
as everybody else that's around you, not
Yes, sir.
disturbing what they need to do. Doug, you wanted us to talk a little bit about process. So what I see is a 2-lot CSM, right? And once you do that, there's probably very little doubt that that north lot that you're holding on to would need to go through a GDP PIP process, because I suspect you're going to have more than one user and some joint accesses. The south lot is one user. And if we have a buildable south lot with one user with an appropriate use, we have gone through zoning approval on that lot without a extensive process. So when you say separate them all out, I'm not sure that's really necessary. If we're gonna do a CSM and have one single buildable lot, we can treat that, I think, like every other single lot that comes in there. I think the issues, obviously, the utility relocates are part of it. That's part of the approval for that project. I don't know who's paying for them or what's going on, but that's part of the approvals for that project. You talked about performance standards, I think, but you know, that's the same thing why I was due and the zoning is appropriate right now. We don't have to change zoning, so at least my opinion is we can treat that like any other single lot we have when an applicant comes in. This is a major project for sure, but it's one applicant on one piece of property. We don't have joint accesses or joint use agreements or anything else on there other than, I assume there'll be an access agreement between you and WPS for getting in and out each other's entrances. You'll want to be able to use their stoplight at times. You'll want to be able to, when they let all that traffic out that way. Because you do feel you're building up again. It's fun to see all those cars coming out all at the same time. They get it fast.
We hope they'll go directly from work to Top Golf at the end of the day.
Less parking than
There we go.
I bet there'll be a percentage. So at least that's my 10 cents on process. If you want to speak to that?
Yes, that's certainly helpful, and I would say one of the elements here is stormwater is still under discussion, and especially kind of going through the old WPS approvals and how that was formulated, and certainly working with Via Becker on that, on the applicant side. And so typically we would have the stormwater come through as part of the zoning permit consideration. Is that something that would be separated out, recognizing that there's the two parties, or, you know, and to sort of consider that separately, or?
I think it'd need to be part of this approval process.
Mm-hmm.
And that might lengthen the time it takes them to get back to us, but I think the approval process would still stay the same, because we wouldn't approve it if they're taking away somebody else's stormwater cleaning without knowing how it's being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's different than most of single lot, single user approvals we do. Your North Lot could be a single lot, single user, but I don't anticipate that. The way I look at that with that one access and multiple users have to, you know, you'd have to join access unless you found one person to use that. That would be prime GDP, PIP for us. But one lot, one user.
Thanks.
There's just a lot of information, but that's no different than any other one. Utility relocates. That's up to them. I don't know who's paying for those or who's doing it. That's the detail they work out as they're going through the process.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I don't think so, but I reserve the right to dive back in after I check off all the notes.
No, I think this is a really good addition to the community. I'm not a golfer, but I've been to many Top Golfs in a variety of locations, and all of the economic activity that I see around those facilities. Most of the time, they've already been there, so I don't know if they were the establishing, you know, sort of anchor tenant that drove the activity, or if there was other activity and that was a good market for them. But yeah, I think it's going to drive a lot of really positive, virtuous economic activity, and especially in that area. Chris is asking a question about when you guys wanted to be up and running. You said you wanted to be in construction next year, but how long are you anticipating to?
Well, Steve and I got to work together on that, but I mean, I'd love to have an opportunity to open end of next year, beginning of 2026. I mean, that would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But there's tenants to vacate, there's other things to be done. It's obviously the first meeting we're having with the city tonight, so we've got quite a bit of work to do, but that would be the goal.
Yep. In all the other locations I've ever encountered the concerns about lighting, I've never experienced Topgolf as having obtrusive lighting, you know, to the surrounding vicinity. I will agree that the net poles you see from a long ways away. I orient myself in big, huge cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas. I'm like, oh yeah, there's the Topgolf. Yeah, you can see them from a long ways away. So I think that shouldn't go, you know, understated, that it will be a very visually dominant thing, but yeah, I think there's a lot to be gained. You guys asked all the other questions. I have a whole lot of other comments.
Thank you. Well, I would just say, I concur, really welcome to Monona. I'm glad you're interested in being here. I think it's a, very appropriate, for the site, and I think it would be a terrific anchor for the area overall, which we all know is aside from the great corporate offices of WPS, is a pretty dated area, so, I think it'd be terrific. I'm not a golfer, because, you know, it's good walk spoiled. But, although I do have a set of golf clubs, so, because I used to be, different time. But I, no, seriously, I, you know, certainly, appreciate your interest in Monona, and Steve, I appreciate your investment, in the community as well, in this whole area, so.
I did have one, sorry, I did have one other comment, Nancy.
Come back to me. Sorry? Come back to you?
Oh, I also wanted to, you know, echo John's comment at the beginning. I thought you gave an excellent presentation.
Yeah.
Really well prepared. Thanks for taking us through the materials as you did. It was a really, really well done presentation.
Just a couple other things that came up or I didn't touch on before. I don't know if you've been asked this before, but any concerns with birds and migratory birds? And I ask this not because there's just nets in the sky, is that you're across the street from Capitol Springs recreational area, and it's essentially a massive wetland with a lot of birds. Can you speak to?
Sure. Yeah, we've been located close to wetlands, close to some bodies of water. We certainly try to distance ourselves to a certain extent there. It's very rare. You know, we have a protocol in place that if something were to happen, you know, we could extract wildlife, whatever it may be, but also keep in mind that these types of nets that we use are very commonly used in aviaries, similar type of netting. So the birds have more keen eyesight and instincts than we do, and generally the process and of construction and the built environment around it, birds learn how to navigate around you know, our netting and net poles.
With all due respect, is that based off of science or just your opinion?
No, I mean, some of that, we've got 100 of these operating across the world, and these instances are extremely rare in which that occurs. But we do have a protocol in place because, kind of like signage, despite the best traffic signage you may have, sometimes things don't always work that way. So we do have a protocol in place to that effect. But these instances with birds are extremely rare.
I just did a quick measurement for those that care. From the center of the eastern wall where they were talking about signs and screens and everything, to the center line of the belt line, assuming that this plan is to scale, is about almost 500 feet. So it's pretty far set back. After I did that, I have far less concerns, but something you still might want to check on. And can you speak to wind loads? I know that some of these have failed. I don't know if they've been Topgolf. I know from my hometown in Fargo, strong winds took down some poles.
That was a competitor.
Understood. Understood.
We have made some advancements over that. So we are located in hurricane zones where there are strong wind loads. We're located in areas where you have ice loads, snow loads, things of that sort. We've designed these nets to have breakaway clips. So when the load becomes to a certain point, instead of overstressing the steel net pole and having that fail, the nets just break away and they fall down to the ground. So that's been effective. We have 9 venues down in the state of Florida, certainly with the hurricanes that have come through that there over the recent years, Fort Myers one in particular. It's worked out very well.
Okay. I know everybody wants to move on, but in future meetings, if you could supply some comps for parking that you
Sure.
had
Yeah.
for bay and square footage, that would be useful information and shouldn't be too hard to pull together.
Yeah, well, this is based on parking demand. We certainly want to open a venue that can accommodate all of our
Certainly.
guests and.
It just
This-
helps us understand.
Sure. And this would be a little bit unique. We are going to work with Steve on overflow parking because, as I mentioned, this will be the first in the state.
Yeah.
And it's a great distance between where this will be located and where the nearest Topgolf venue would be located. So we hope it's popular, but we want to make sure that we are providing enough parking.
I'd agree with Chris's comment about having that drive aisle maybe expanded, but we're already under green space, and I just wonder, like, that's gonna be another 5,000 square feet of impervious.
Thinking like me.
So, I don't know, get creative. I don't have a solution, but
Maybe it doesn't need
Maybe-
30 feet either, maybe just a little wider.
maybe 2 feet. Feet are a lot in a drive aisle.
Can I just ask a question? Were you concerned with WPS traffic going through the Topgolf?
Yes,
Okay. Because they'll be able to go out WPS Drive
correct.
on the west side and the east side of their parking lot.
Oh, they only have one spot to get out, and that's onto Broadway. Other than that, they gotta come back down through here. The one with One City School's been cut off. That's not there anymore.
Right.
So they've only got the one way out to Broadway. So this is their second way. is-
Right, the west side is their second way out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this remains. If you
Well, that's what
park
we're talking
here, you
about.
can Go out that way, or if you park here,
You still go out the same way.
yeah.
It all goes north. I'm sorry?
That's the same as we are today, we don't go
You don't go
in
west.
that parking lot.
Well, you go west now.
You
It's
can go to
Engle
Engle.
Street right
You
now.
can go to
I
Engle.
see people do that all the time. That's Engle Street, which is actually down probably more where that, probably between the parking lot and the detention basin, I would guess somewhere in there, but your people leave to the west often. They don't all want to sit in queue on the same stoplight.
I've never seen.
Well, maybe once you're down to 100 and you leave at different times, maybe it's not an issue.
Yeah.
But you are gonna fill the building up again, right?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
They haven't asked us for an easement through the lot. Now, that doesn't mean people won't do it naturally, but
Hmm.
Yeah, I think anybody using that would have been from our RKB building, which would be gone, so those people will be in the other lot now, so they would go out the other way. It'd be fine.
Might have got your 5,000 square feet back.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
But.
Okay.
Take a-
Rob,
That's it.
anything else?
I promise, until I have another copy.
Okay, great. Anything else from this group?
I have one
John?
quick comment.
Yes.
In future presentations, I think it would be nice to weave a sentence or two about the important, or some sustainability elements of the project. I mean, this is a major development, and sustainability is important in our community. So it'd be nice to share some of those, because I'm sure they exist.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make that
Okay.
we'll include that in our next
Thank you.
submission.
Yeah, thank you, John, for mentioning that, and potentially related to the same, or at least partially related to the same. I just also wanted to comment about the materials board that came across. I know exactly. I know a lot of us were very surprised as we were passing it down that it was featherweight. And I can tell you that one of the things will come up with this commission is, and Steve knows this all too well, is that we want to see you live for a long time. And we expect every building that's built to stand the test of time in terms of the materials that are used, and including things like masonry, which we discuss a lot here, almost as much as parking. And so, and I would just say, from a personal level, I've always had a bit of a concern around EFS, the use of EFS and fiber cement, as Steve knows too, because we went through this with the current, just in terms of, I know, let's just say my family owned property down in Hilton Head.
that were constructed with EFS, and I'll leave it at that. So I just know that the previous problems, construction problems, which I'm sure you're aware, and something like LP Smart Site as opposed to fiber cement for similar reasons. So anyway, I just appreciate you passing around the board, but just know that that's apt to come up. The materials overall, quality materials is apt to come up in future meetings. But again, otherwise, terrific presentation.
Thank you.
I think terrific addition for Monona, and appreciate your time tonight. Do you feel like you got the information you needed from this group?
Oh, yes, ma'am. A lot of good feedback tonight. So certainly we plan on coming back in the future, and we'll take everything into consideration as well. But I think it's been great open dialogue tonight.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else from the commission, again, we thank you for your time. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Thank you, Deanna, for coming in. And we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, with that, I'd like to move to number 8, reports from staff and commission members. Staff report regarding the status of development project proposals.
Thank you. I'll steal my notes back. Thanks. No worries. Really, just an update on the next meeting, the June 24th meeting. The Slindy, the Owen Road project, the GDP and Phase 1 PIP will be returning with that for consideration. There'll also be a consideration of action request for the dedicated commercial space over at Besa. If you remember, there was just over 3,000 square feet of dedicated. So the zoning permit request for that will be coming through, as well as a pre-hearing for a potential accessory dwelling unit as well. So coming through as a conditional use permit within a single family district. And so the applicant would like to come through for a pre-hearing, kind of discuss the proposal, gathering some information right now, but expecting that either on June 24th or July 8th.
Is that a new ordinance or something in Monona, the accessory dwelling?
The determination is that it could be, it would be considered as, or come forward as a possible conditional use, as sort of a permissible adjacent type use in a single family district. It's
so
not.
There's no new ordinance or anything we need to familiarize ourselves with?
Nothing's.
If the council passed something, it'd be nice to know what the.
No,
No.
Nothing did.
We have not.
There's nothing dedicated, so.
So there's nothing new as far as our.
No, it's simply an application within the current framework.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Great. We don't, do we have anything on BEI efforts?
Nothing that comes to mind. No.
Sustainability? Nothing comes to mind. Okay. And upcoming meetings?
Expecting both of those meetings to proceed, yeah.
Great. Any requests from Doug for information?
I have a question. When is the end of the moratorium related to the vape shops?
So I believe that passed City Council early May, so it would be 6 months from then. So the hope, we actually have a meeting to discuss this tomorrow with a couple different colleagues from different agencies, kind of learn. Milwaukee was a pretty recent example of a moratorium, and so some nearby partners that we're going to discuss sort of some of the lessons learned that they've had and opportunities there to what to consider, what to look for, and we can go from there. So the hope is that we can start kind of gathering that information, considering possible changes, then come back to Plan Commission, with some discussion. I think there'll be certainly possible ordinance discussion as part of that, but I think also kind of the inventory of what we have and more of a spatial consideration as well. So proximity to parks, schools, that kind of thing. So I see it as kind of a twofold approach. So definitely a lot of work on the back end, and so that's kind of where lessons learned and things like that would come in. But hoping to have that, I would say, late summer probably is kind of the first pass, giving plenty of time, within that 6-month window. Thanks.
Could you give us an update on what's going on with the Bloom project, since it's been sitting kind of vacant for, I'm sure, I trust they're just going through their permits and approvals and all that, but it's been sitting since December,
Yes.
so
Absolutely. So
it seems like a long time.
Yes. So I think everybody's aware of the requirement for the demolition by the end of the year. That was part of the CDA, the development agreement. So that sort of caused things to move quite quickly early on, I would say, with the site clearance. Since then, certainly I kind of call it the civil, the legal elements, the CSM, the sidewalk easements, the right-of-way, those elements have all been getting worked through. The CSM was actually recorded last week, so we have that completed now. That was all signed off, and very, very, very few items remain on the civil checklist effectively now. The Darren's review, the stormwater elements and things like that. So we're really down to two or three items remaining on that, and we're working through positively on that. So I'm expecting, I have not seen anything from the state yet for building permits, sort of plan review side of things, but as has been the case with others, they've come in for early start, footings, foundations, things like that in the ground, and that would be my expectation that they would start there. So it's difficult to put a timeline on it, but we have also been working with them. I know there was some issues with site fencing and things like that, general upkeep, just with not having a presence there daily, and that was rectified very quickly as well. So they've been a good partner so far, and we're eager to see that construction begin.
Okay. And do we have a sense, on the other flip side of that coin, the construction on Broadway has been rapid? Do we have, in the townhouses or in apartment buildings that are well along, do we have a potential, is he still looking at the end of summer?
Yes, so that's a discussion point at the moment. One of the challenges is sort of the staged processing of that, when is appropriate to give the occupancy for those. The townhome units, the westernmost townhomes would be the first to deliver, and I believe the eastern townhomes will be the last. So some discussion there about the water quality treatment elements, the site landscaping, as well as just general equipment on site. But end of year is the sort of tax credit deadline for the whole project, but certainly there's discussions going on right now of much sooner for elements of that.
I want to apologize to this group for being a few minutes late again this evening. As you might imagine, we have a pretty significant festival going on at San Damiano starting on Friday, for which I'm providing some leadership. Encourage everyone to attend from the 14th to the 22nd, the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpting Festival, which we have received, among other things, a $40,000 or just under $40,000 grant, the largest grant permitted by the Department of Tourism for the state of Wisconsin. It's being advertised everywhere. It's just one of many grants, so we expect good crowds, and I've been burning candle a little bit too much, and was tardy. So anyway, I apologize to this group, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. All right.
I don't know what I was thinking.
What's that? My beer?
No, I